advise that the meeting is now being recorded, and I'll take this adherent for this meeting of the Executive Committee of the 11th of October 2023. We have present Councillors Allison, Anderson, Brown, Carmichael, Chalmers, Clark and Convery. I have an apology from Councillor Cooper, and Councillor Watson is substituting for Councillor Cooper, and I see that Councillor Watson's here. We have present Councillor Cowan. I have an apology from Councillor Devlin. Councillor Devlin is being substituted by Councillor Scott, and I see that Councillor Scott's at the meeting remotely. We have present Councillors Fagan, Ferguson Miller, Hamilton, Horsham, Logan. We also have present Councillors Loudon, Hugh MacDonald, Ian McCallan, Councillor McClymont, Councillors McCreary, Leslie MacDonald, McGeever, McLachlan, Nelson, Razak, Robb, Ross, Shearer and Walker. Can I just check that I have everybody, I've mentioned everybody and that there's nobody that I haven't mentioned, and I don't see that that's the case. So we have some officers present at the meeting, and with that, Chair, I'll hand back to you for the business of the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I come then to item 1, which is declarations of interest? Can I ask if anyone wishes to declare an interest? I'm not seeing any declarations of interest, so can we move then to item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting? Are there any questions on the minutes of the previous meeting? I don't see any questions. Can I therefore ask that we agree those minutes as a correct record?
Agreed.
We're agreed. Can I come now to item 3, which is the first of our monitoring items on the revenue budget, and ask Paul Manning to speak to the report. Paul.
Thanks, Chair. So the paper that you've got in front of you gives the revenue monitoring up to the beginning of September. It takes you to the position at the 8th of September. Now, within the body of the paper, there are 3 things that get mentioned that were also mentioned in the previous paper, which came last month. So you can see the first of those at 4.2, and it relates to children and families services. So what that piece of the paper is talking about is a budget pressure that exists within children and families services. It notes the fact that we've got a solution for the current year, and it notes that work is ongoing in terms of how that gets managed in year 2024-25. Now, the second item that was in the previous paper is on the second page of this report, and it talks about adults and older people. So you'll remember this has appeared in, I think, at least 2 previous reports coming to the Executive Committee. Now, there is an update on what was said in the last report. So at 4.7, it says that officers within the IJB have been looking to identify recurring funding solutions, and a budget recovery plan was presented to the IJB on the 19th of September but was not agreed. Now, what I do understand is that a further paper is going to be presented to an IJB meeting on the 18th of October dealing with this. The third item which appeared in the last paper relates to teacher numbers. So again, this is about an amount of money that the government are at present withholding from the council's financial settlement, and this applies to all councils, relating to teacher numbers and relating to the 2023 census details. So I'm still indicating that as a risk item at this time. In terms of recommendations within the paper, the figures at the back and in the appendices indicate a break-even position on the general fund account and on the revenue, on the housing revenue account. So what the committee has been asked to do is to note those positions. So happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paul. Can I ask if there are any questions in this report? I have 2. Can I come to Councillor Robb in the first instance?
Thank you. A couple of questions, if that's okay. It's just to ask for a wee update, either at this meeting or the next meeting, about the implications and short or longer term benefits of Strathclyde Pension Fund realigning their finances. And the second question, do you want that now? Or do we one at a time?
Take both just now. Yeah.
Okay. And it's to ask for a report on the Frontline First Fund. We've seen the massive flooding in some areas, and I think any efforts we can do to unblock drains will support climate adaptation as things move forward. Thank you.
Okay, I think both issues that we're on top of, so I'll come to Paul in the first instance.
Okay, so just to cover the first of Councillor Robb's questions around the position with the contributions to pensions in relation to Strathclyde Pension Fund. So that relates to year 2024-25. It doesn't apply in the current year. Now, I believe across November, December, I will come back with a further report on the 2024-25 budget, and that will be dealt with as part of that report, Councillor Robb.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Robb. In terms of Frontline First, happy to bring a report to the next committee on Frontline First. In terms of the question about flooding, part of the Frontline First money has been directed towards the clearing the gullies, and that work is ongoing. I would perhaps point out that it was, particularly unseasonable flooding that we had over the weekend, and even with cleared gullies, some of that flooding would have happened. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And could I come now to Councillor Allison?
Thanks, Chair. Paul, just looking for a little bit more information. At 4.6 and 4.7, you've highlighted the issues with the IJB at the moment. And under 7, you've said financial implications and just referring us back to that, but it doesn't actually give us any detail as to the council's involvement in that. Are we looking at increasing contributions to the IJB so that they can get a solution? Are we looking at contributing funds so that the closures don't happen? Can you give us just a little bit more detail on what's happening there, please?
Okay, so what I mentioned a second ago is that I understand a paper is going to the IJB on the 18th of October. So a couple of facets in terms of what I understand is in that paper. It is looking to present for approval the recurring and non-recurring budget strategy to address the issues that are described in the paper. And I believe it does provide clarification on a wider range of areas which were originally considered. So there's going to be further detail in that paper around the items that went, and as this paper refers to, on the 19th of September, and which weren't approved. So that's going to go forward on that basis. As part of this, there isn't consideration of further money going in from the council, so that's why that's not referred to at this point. So there is a paper, it is going to another body, and it probably wouldn't be appropriate for me to start to prejudge the outcome of that meeting, Councillor Allison. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, can we agree to note that report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Can I come now to item 4 on the capital budget and return to Paul?
Okay, thanks, Chair. So in terms of the capital budget, there is a request in there for an adjustment to the capital programme, and it's an increase of £94,000, and you can see what that is on page 22 of your papers. So there's a reference in there to Douglas Primary School floodlights and the fact that Glenbuck and Douglas Football Academy have been awarded £94,000 from the Clyde Wind Farm and Renewable Energy Fund, and that's to install floodlighting. So what we're looking for permission to do is to increase the value of the capital programme by that in order to accommodate that additional project. The remainder of the paper gives a brief update on how things are progressing in terms of what we would have expected to spend by this point. So at 4.4, you can see there we're just marginally ahead of where we would have expected to be on the General Fund programme. And there's also the position given at 5.3 in relation to the housing revenue capital programme. So you can see there that the capital programme for housing £1.92 million behind, but there is an explanation given there as to why that's happening and reprogramming that's going to happen as a result. In terms of recommendations in the paper, it looks for approval of that adjustment that I mentioned and for noting of the position on the General Fund and the Housing Revenue Account programmes. So again, happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this report? I'm not seeing any hands, so can we agree to note the report?
Agreed.
We're agreed. Thank you very much. Can I come now to item 5, and additional funding from the Scottish Government and other external sources. Over to you again, Paul.
Okay, so there is an additional amount of revenue funding, and that's in the current year, is £1.373 million. That's coming from the Scottish Government, and it's coming in through Housing and Technical Resources. You can see on page 29 an explanation of what that is. It relates to Ukrainian resettlement, and it's the Council's share of an allocation from a £30 million national total to support displaced people from Ukraine. So again, happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions on this report? Councillor Robb.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. Not particularly about this part of money, but I was just ask on the Play Park Renewal Fund, when will we get information on how the council's drawing down that funding?
I'll come to David. It's not specifically in this item, but I'll come to David Booth just to respond.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Robb. We're working at the moment on the Play Park Renewable Programme. At the moment, we've got a team of officers working on that, and it involves engaging in the local area with councillors about what the solution is for their particular area in terms of play parks. The money's coming from the Scottish Government, as you'll be aware. What I don't have is the timetable or the frequency of that's coming through, but the money has been committed and some money is in the programme already, but that will be drawn down at key stages as we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks. As I recall, we were taking an area-based approach to it, so it would take a while for it to work through every area of South Lanarkshire. But Councillor McGeever.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's just a quick question. I've noticed on page 29 that the figure of 1.373 million as a percentage of 30 million is maybe a wee bit less than we would usually get as a share of any kind of national spend. I'm just wondering, is that because of the overall number of refugees settled here, or is it because of other factors? There's maybe a formula or something that we could be made aware of. I'm not sure.
Paul?
These allocations, right, can vary, right, in terms of the exact share, right, that the council gets. Normally, for amounts of money, if they're distributed on a population basis, we would expect to get somewhere between 5 and 6.5%, right, in terms of the council's share of a national total. Now, that might depend on what pot of money it is. So if it's for school-aged children, it'll be different than it would be for an amount of money that relates to, for example, the over 65s or the over 80s. So these things go through something called the Settlement and Distribution Group, right, which the council's represented on through myself, and we discuss these various allocations. So what I can do is go back and get the records in terms of how this amount of money was allocated and feed that back to you if you want, Councillor McGeever.
Right, if there are no other questions, can I ask that we agree to note the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I come now to item 6, which is the first of our items for decision. These are recommendations referred to us by the Finance and Corporate Resources Committee, and Geraldine McCann is going to speak to this report. Geraldine.
Thank you, Chair. These are recommendations which were endorsed by the Finance and Corporate Committee on the 27th of September, and they are brought to you today as committee for approval. The first is the Treasury Management Activity Report for 22-23 and the 22-23 Treasury Management and Prudential Code Indicators, and this is brought to you for noting. The second is the Annual Investment Report for 22-23, and this has been endorsed for approval by this committee. The details are in section 3 of the report, which contains an extract of the minute of the Finance and Corporate Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Geraldine. Can I ask if there are any questions on this item? Councillor Robb.
Sorry, I think I'm making up for missing the last one. So just a few questions on this one. I noticed that the council had placed deposits with Bank of Scotland, RBS and Clydesdale banks. Were any deposits placed with the other banks the council opened accounts with that were better on their climate rating? And has there been any progress on responses from banks on sustainability? I understand the council were going to write to the banks on their climate performance.
Okay, Jackie, please.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Councillor Rob. In terms of us placing money with the other banks, we haven't yet. We haven't needed to. The funds that we've placed with the banks that you mentioned are on deposit, they're on call, which means those banks can't use that money for any form of investment themselves, as I know you appreciate. In terms of the response from the banks that we've asked, they have been mixed, I would say, and we are pursuing them for more detailed responses on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on this item? I don't see any, so can I ask that we agree the report?
Agreed.
We're agreed. Can I come now to item 7, which is on religious representation on the Education Resources Committee, and can I invite Carol Mackenzie to speak to this report? Carol.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Committee. This is an update on the current position regarding the appointment of a third church religious representative to serve on the Education Resources Committee. Section 3 provides some background around the requirement for a local authority to invite representatives from church organisations to act as religious representatives on the Education Resources Committee. Moving on to section 4, it describes the process we have undertaken to attempt to secure a third religious representative for the committee, in addition to our 2 already established reps from the Church of Scotland and the Roman Catholic Church. Committee will note from the report that we originally did get 2 expressions of interest. However, one candidate withdrew her application and the second did not pursue their application despite several attempts to make contact and to move the process forward. Therefore, we did re-advertise this position in August 2023. However, following the closing date, no nominations or expressions of interest were received. Following advice from Legal Services, it is now proposed that the committee continue to operate with the 2 confirmed religious church representatives from the Church of Scotland and the Roman Catholic Church. And committee is referred back to the following recommendations contained in section 2.1, namely to approve that it be noted that it has not been possible to appoint a third church or religious representative to the Education Committee, and that the committee continue to operate with the 2 confirmed representatives from the Church of Scotland and the Roman Catholic Church. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol. Can I ask if there are any questions in this report? Again, I'm not seeing any questions, so can I ask that we agree the report?
Agreed.
We're agreed. Thank you very much. And can I come now to item 8, which is on the revision of costs and the increase in funding to extend, adapt and modernise Our Lady of Lourdes Primary School. And Carol, again, is going to speak in this report. Thank you.
Again, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to update committee on the cost pressures and funding solutions within the Our Lady of Lourdes project, and to note that approval has been given outside the committee cycle via a standing order of 37C to grant permission to commence work because of the timescales involved and the urgent requirement to award tenders. You can see from section 4 of the report that tender costs received were significantly higher than expected due to unprecedented construction inflation pressures and the current volatile nature of the construction materials market. Paragraph 4.4 describes how our Housing and Technical Resources colleagues then undertook a full tender review and value engineering exercise in order to reassess the specification and reduce costs while still ensuring that we will maintain the high standard of accommodation associated with the Council's primary school modernisation programme. This exercise reduced the costs significantly, but still requires a budget increase. And paragraph 5.1 provides some info about how this shortfall can be managed. Paragraph 5.3 of the report highlights the challenge of completing the project by the start of the new term in August 2024. However, members should note that this is still very much the aspiration and that every measure will be taken to ensure that this happens. Staff from Education Resources and Housing and Technical Resources will meet regularly, both on and off site, to ensure that everything possible is done to ensure that Our Lady of Lourdes children return to their refurbished new building by August 2024. Moving on, for information, paragraph 6.1 is a reminder to committee that part of the funding of this project is coming from City Deal, and the March Executive Committee approved £1 million from the Council's overall City Deal programme to be aligned to this project. And Appendix 1 of this report provides information for noting on the details of the full business case being submitted to City Deal in order to now release this £1 million worth of funding. So referring back to the recommendations in paragraph 2.1, committee is asked to approve the following recommendations: that the action taken in terms of Standing Order 37C because of the timescales involved and the urgent requirement to award tenders by the Executive Director of Education Resources in consultation with the Deputy Chair and an ex-officio member to grant permission to commence work and to approve the full business case via City Deal be noted. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions, as is my colleague here from Housing and Technical Resources, around any technical issues. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can I ask if there are any questions in this report? And can I come to John Anderson?
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I'd like to make a comment or get some assurances and then ask a question. I'd like some more detail of the review and the value engineering exercise. I mean, that could actually cover a multitude. And I was heavily involved with the Parent Council and the school staff going through the exercise prior to it. So I'd like to know exactly what it is that we are changing. But on their behalf as well, I'd like to an assurance that we're not going to be using any inferior material just to save the pennies, and also make sure that all the material that we're using meets our sustainability goals, because I think that was important coming out of all the meetings. And I'd also like to some assurance of, are we going to be cutting corners or taking shortcuts that will lead to further costs and disruption further down the line by not doing some of the jobs that we said we were going to do just now, because I think reducing the spend on the refurbishment on the new tender costs, by 1.6 million must lead to some impact somewhere on what was originally promised and agreed. I could also ask, one of the main concerns during the Parent Council discussions was a secure entrance rather than visitors coming through the playground, and the idea was to keep the visitors separate from the children. So I'd just like some assurance that that is still going ahead. Thank you.
Right, thanks. I'm going to come to probably Carol and possibly also Stephen. I'll let Carol and Stephen decide how to respond to that one. If I could come, if you could just press your button, and Carol, I'll come to you in the first instance. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Ansell, for your question. I have been reassured by my colleagues in Housing and Technical Resources that the quality of the refurbishment works will not impact on the overall quality and performance of the school building, and nor will they impact on maintenance costs. And I believe part of the exercise around this was to identify items that perhaps had not reached the end of their life, and that would fit in with the Council's sustainability agenda. And I'll pass over to my colleague Stephen to provide some more information on that. I'm also reassured that there are still plans in place to ensure that there is a secure entrance into the playground, and that intention has not changed, despite the fact that we have, reviewed, as you say, the specification. But just to assure all elected members that, we are expecting a refurbishment of the highest standards, and that's what we want for our children, and that we are confident that the revised proposal will still meet the specifications in the tender. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen.
Councillor Anderson, thanks for the question. And look, you're right to ask that question. You've identified the fact that we've made savings of almost £1.7 million, and you have concerns. Going through, you've asked, are we taking shortcuts? The answer to that is no. We've gone through a very robust process that involved analysis of tenders when the prices come back and a very detailed value engineering exercise. You've asked us if the materials will be substandard. Absolutely not. We're using alternative materials. These alternative materials have the same lifespan and in the case of the cladding has a greater thermal value. So it's reduced cost and greater energy efficiency. You've also asked about taking shortcuts. I don't particularly know what you mean by that, but if, for example, what you mean is we're not replacing everything, and some of that might be electrical infrastructure, the answer to that is yes, we're not doing it. And there's a good reason for it, because it didn't need to be replaced. These are still within their lifespan. At a time we were talking about repurposing, at a time we were talking about the circular economy, it just doesn't make sense to replace electrical infrastructure that was perfect, which is well within its lifespan, is well maintained and will not create any problems. It didn't make sense to make savings. It didn't make any sense to replace electrical wiring, for example, for the sake of doing it. So I believe we have gone through a very robust process. We have not taken any shortcuts. The materials we've used, we're very happy with. They're going to look good. They're going to perform very well. And they're still going to allow you to, everybody in here, to still be proud of the school estate, because it's still to the very, very high standards that you would expect of our schools. Because the staff working on this have been working on it for a long time. They're very proud of the school estate as well, and they're not going to take these shortcuts. So I can give you that assurance that no, you're not going to see a substandard product. You're going to see a product that you're going to be very happy with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. John, your button's still on. Are you going to come back?
Yeah, I'm just a bit concerned a wee bit there about the secure entrance. The secure entrance is one thing, but the discussions we had with Van Sinclair and others was to be a separate entrance completely. Now, the difference between having a buzzer on a gate and a separate entrance, which was agreed, I'm just not sure what are they going to get. Are they going to get a separate entrance? Because this entrance comes right through the playground, or is it just going to be a buzzer on the gate and the outside? Thanks.
Stephen?
Yeah, Councillor Anderson, thanks again. Yeah, we are aware of that concern. We are looking at a separate gate, and that's something that we're working on just now. So I'm pretty sure that we can come back to you, because we picked it. That was obviously something that was raised in the original report on the 1st of March, and that's something that we're picked up and dealing with, Councillor Anderson.
Okay, thank you very much for those assurances. Can I come now to Councillor Robb?
Thank you. Access to the grounds at Our Lady of Lourdes was raised with me previously as part of the Space to Play campaign before I was elected, so that's why I raised in March about how the designs were taking into account the demand for access to the grounds out with school hours for informal play. So I was really pleased to hear that the officer gave me an update on that just in the last few days to say that is being considered. And I'd just like to hear if there's any updates since then, and to express the value in this new world of using assets more efficiently, that we should absolutely consider multiple uses for new buildings.
Carol?
Thank you, Councillor Robb. Yes, I agree with the point you've raised, and this issue of community access to our facilities is still actively being, worked through, with the hope of finding a solution for not only the school but for the community.
Okay, thanks. I had another hand which I think has disappeared, and and I think Councillor Convery also wants to speak. Councillor Convery.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As a local member like John, I had reservations, but what I'd done, John, I went and get the facts. The facts are here, and I'm quite happy. I had a long discussion with Stephen regarding it, because I wouldn't have an inferior school as part of the school estate of South Lanarkshire, because we've got the best school estate in the whole of Britain, if not the world. And I kept saying that when we were in power. Now we're back in power. The school will be built to the specification that we expect. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, if there are no other questions, can I ask then that well, that's a report for noting, so we note that report. We need to be agreed. We need to be agreed. Okay, can we agree then that the recommendations?
We agree.
We're agreed. I have no items of urgent business, so can I thank you for your attendance and bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.